It's all about sort of being declinist, isn't it? It's just this idea that we are just sort of stumbling through to sort of inevitable decline. And this is a crucial part of your report that you have co-authored along with many other eminent folk, former party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, but also Professor Robert Toombs and others. And it's a report you've produced for the Centre for Brexit Policy, looking at Britain in the post-Brexit world, and it's being published tomorrow, I think. And what you're saying is that this government, and this Prime Minister, Boris Johnson in particular, is failing to basically reap the full benefits of Brexit because the country's ruling elites are being crippled by, well, a sort of defeatist, declinist mentality and a woke dogma. What do you mean by that?
Well, declinism is something that's been a feature of British public life now for very many years. In fact, it was the principal reason why we applied to join the former European Economic Community back in the 1960s. There was a myth that Britain was doomed to to continuing decline, which would stretch into infinity. And what the paper does is, first of all, to expose that as a myth. There's an excellent section written, in fact, by Professor Robert Toombs, which assesses the history of the United Kingdom and shows that we were never, as many people thought, a superpower. What we always were was a very strong, medium-sized power that punched well above its weight. And the factors that, in fact, made Britain great still prevail. We've got a very stable and cohesive legal system. We've got a coherent national strategy. We've got a very strong financial sector. And we have a unique talent for capitalizing on soft power. And we say that these are the assets that the United Kingdom should be utilizing in the future post-Brexit.
Well, again, you talk about soft power, the fact that English is such an important language in the worlds of business, in culture, in entertainment, film, TV, on the internet. I mean, my favourite fact is French Air Force fighter pilots, when they're in the air, they speak English to each other and to ground control. That's how important a role. I love it every time the European Union leadership, when they give press conferences, they do it first of all in English. We've long gone. I mean, and it's fantastic. We do have that soft power, and it's around the world. But why do you think so many in government, particularly in the civil service, particularly in the elite establishment, the people who are supposed to sort of be the people who most benefit from Britain's prowess around the world, why do you think they've got such a negative view of Britain?
I think it's cultural, and it stretches back very, very many years. It stretches back to before our joining the European Union.
Is it fashionable? Is it fashionable to just think Britain's a bit embarrassing?
I think that there is certainly an element of that. There's a kind of national self-denigration that is probably most pronounced in the elites of this country. But, of course, there is also the question of confidence. For almost half a century, the UK actually subcontracted its foreign policy, in fact, its policy generally, to the European Union. And what we were left with was topping and tailing European Union diktats. Yeah. That's gone now, and what we need to do, I believe, and I believe we can do, is to rediscover that self-confidence that was the hallmark of this country for many hundreds of years. I think that the British people understood that when they voted to leave the European Union, which, of course, the elite said they would never do. They more or less poo-pooed the idea that we would ever leave the EU. But
also, they told us not to vote to leave the EU. We were supposed to listen to them because they knew better than us.
That's absolutely right. In fact, you'll recall that every household in the country had, at the cost of £9 million, a leaflet telling us how catastrophic it would be if we were to leave the European Union. Well, it's not turned out that way.
Yeah. Well, I ripped mine up and posted it back to number 10, as I think many other thousands did. The trouble is, the man who's in number 10 right now is the man who led the Vote Leave campaign and delivered Brexit. And I would say all credit to him on those fronts. Always give credit where it's due. But he's not choosing to reap the benefits. I get the impression from him a lot of the time that he's sort of a bit embarrassed about having delivered Brexit and is allowing an awful lot of things to slip by, and we are not taking advantage of our role as a proud independent nation, as a sovereign state. Yes, we've acted brilliantly in Ukraine, again, all credit for that, but I do feel that there is still there is still a little bit of sort of, I suppose, elite embarrassment about the fact
I'm not sure that's true of Boris Johnson. In fact, I think I would challenge that because I think Boris actually understands the importance of Brexit. And you made the very important point then about Ukraine. What we have seen is the United Kingdom actually leading the charge of the West, if you like, in supporting Ukraine. It was Boris Johnson who went to Scandinavia and, remarkably enough, got both Finland and Sweden to sign up to apply for a membership of NATO. So I think that he's already showing that the UK, out of the European Union, can have a far more potent influence over the world and world events. And what we want to see is that sort of spirit written out right across British foreign policy to take advantage of the unique opportunity of Brexit.
Can I just ask you finally, I mean, we've got massive cost of living crisis, we've got war in Europe, we have rail strikes, we're threatened with a summer of discontent ahead, we're still dealing with the aftermath, and a lot of this, by the way, is still dealing with the aftermath of lockdown policy. Goodness knows we're going to have people demanding that we go back into lockdowns and all that coming up in the autumn again. There is a lot of doom and gloom about. There is a lot of sort of pessimism that the next few, not just months, but years are going to be really, really hard as we deal with the fallout of all of this. Tell us something to cheer us up.
Well, I think that if you look at what's happening already, you'll see that Britain is starting to reap the benefits of Brexit. And we're striking free trade agreements with countries right across the world. But the most interesting one is the application that we've made to join the CPTPP, which is a bit of a mouthful, but is the Pacific Free Trade Area. The Indo-Pacific region is where most of the growth is going to happen in the future. And Britain has already been given the right to apply for membership, and it's very likely that we will. That will see a new Britain actually involved in the most important and dynamic region of the world now that we've left the European Union, which sadly is starting to look as if it is falling to bits. And I think that that is something very optimistic that we can look forward to in the relatively near future.
Good. I'm glad we ended on a happy note. David Jones, Conservative MP, co-author of that report for the Centre for Brexit Policy and former Welsh Secretary as well. We're going to talk more about rail strikes and